Okay, well, welcome everybody. Since many of the audience is new to FC Build, let me give a short intro of Foundation Capital before we get started. We've been around for 26 years. We're an early stage venture capital firm. We have more than 30 companies that have gone public. In our enterprise practice, we've been fortunate to partner with entrepreneurs in infrastructure up and down the stack, from cloud, data, AI automation, DevOps, SaaS, cybersecurity, to name a couple of areas. We primarily lead seed and Series A's, usually before a company has revenue or even sometimes a product. Basically, we invest in awesome dreamers with big dreams and work with them to make it real. And if that describes one of you, please get connected to one of us. And this conference is a celebration and a learning experience from people who have been dreamers and who have done it very successfully. So today, I am super excited to have Todd Olson and Jay Parikh here with us to talk about going from product market fit all the way to hyperscale. Welcome, Todd and Jay.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Good to be here.
So, brief backgrounds on both of them. Todd Olson is the founder and CEO of Pendo, which helps companies deliver better digital experiences. Pendo was started in 2013, actually in my hometown, North Carolina, and today is worth more than $2.6 billion. Congratulations, Todd. Jay recently joined as co-CEO of Lacework, which is a cloud security services provider. Jay joined Lacework as an advisor back in May, following his tenure at Facebook as VP of Head of Engineering and Infrastructure, where he led a global team of tens of thousands of people to build and scale software and hardware infrastructure and platforms. So congratulations, Jay, on your new gig.
Thank you.
I wanted to dig a little bit deeper in some of your journey to this point, and then we can talk about your experiences and businesses. And then I think the audience will have some questions at the very end as well. So feel free to ask questions. Maybe we'll start with Jay. Could you tell us a bit about Lacework and what attracted you to the company?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to start off, I joined, as you mentioned, Joanne, as an advisor back in May of this year. And what ultimately I think got me excited about joining the company was that just really understanding, coming out of Facebook, working at Lacework, seeing the customer journey and understanding more and more about what's happening with the cloud, is that cloud security is just a totally massive problem in the industry. Just as more companies move to the cloud, they build more applications, they store more data, they're hiring more people, they're partnering with other companies. All of this is facilitated and moving really, really fast in the cloud. But all the old ways of doing security on-prem, in terms of setting up rules, deploying boxes, and doing things manually, and looking, for that proverbial kind of needle in a haystack in tons and tons of logs, that just doesn't keep up in the cloud world, because the cloud world is just moving way, way, way faster than I think anybody really comprehends. Not only is just there a lot more applications and code and data being generated in the cloud, but there's a lot of changing happen. Things spin up, things spin down, things move around. The cloud providers themselves are launching services all the time that engineers and others are developers are experimenting with. And the old ways of just doing security in the cloud just aren't sufficient. They're not keeping up. So what ends up happening is companies end up slowing down because they don't know how to manage that risk that's there in the cloud. And what attracted me about Lacework was the company has been built around this underlying data platform. So we approach the security problem as a data problem. We look at a lot of different data from different customers, or each customer. We ingest that, we process it, we normalize it, we apply machine learning to it. And then we've built a platform that allows multiple applications to kind of ride on top of or be built on top of this data platform. And, this is how we did it at Facebook in terms of how we scaled our infrastructure and our, applications like Instagram and WhatsApp, and all the data that was stored and processed for 3.5 billion people around the planet. We did the security, or, the security is done via this data-driven approach, but that technology and those systems are all private to Facebook. And the rest of the world doesn't have access to this data-driven approach. And I feel like the mission of Lacework is to build that platform and these applications, and then to help customers around the world to actually be able to build quickly in the cloud, be able to change, kind of develop and innovate faster, but also do it in a secure way. So that ultimately is what got me excited about it. I think it's just a massive kind of problem in our industry, and a chance to do something really great and impactful.
And that's awesome that you're bringing the powers of engineering at Facebook to the rest of the world. I think a lot of companies are going to very much appreciate that. Todd, how about yourself? Tell us a bit about why you started Pendo. What did you observe? What were you trying to solve?
Yeah. Well, I always answer this question kind of in two parts. Like, one is, why did I start a company? And then, why did I pick the problem of Pendo? And as I think why I started a company, I think, my last company went public. I was kind of taking some time off and trying to figure out what I wanted to do next. And I wanted to be here local in my hometown. I was tired of getting on planes every week. And that was the time when we were getting on planes every week to go do things, back in 2012, 2013. And I visited a lot of companies, and good companies, good people, but it just wasn't the kind of the culture that I wanted to create. So I think culture is what really drove me. Like, I need to start something myself. I think I have a vision of the kind of company I want to create, and I just don't see it yet. And then the problem came to me really, really fast, because I lived the pain. So I was the head of product at my prior SaaS business, and I struggled to get really good data on how people were using our product. It would often require some set of engineers, and we'd go to some cranky data scientists that wouldn't let our team look at it. And we would ask these people for reports, and they would, like, again, very curmudgeonly tell us that we can't get what we want, or it's going to take months of effort to get it. And finally, I just give up and get pissed off and, like, move on to the next thing. So I found, is like, there was this, like, in a lot of companies, like, data is hoarded by this, group of individuals, and it isn't really widely accessible, but yet it's so valuable to help inform how are we doing as a business, how are we doing as a product, what should we be investing in, are the things we're investing in actually yielding results, driving customer value. So a lot of pain there, a lot of value, but hadn't seen good solutions. And the second thing I saw was that I'd spent so much of my career helping teams ship software effectively. So my past comes from more of a developer tools background. And I realized that now, congratulations, we can now ship software pretty quickly. And no, not every company can, probably, but a lot of companies can. Like
Jay can.
Jay can. I'm sure a lot. Yeah. I mean, like, cloud, DevOps, like, all this stuff. Like, we've got really good systems to go, like, live to the world fast. Now the problem becomes, like, can our users consume it? Are they getting value out of it? Are we building the right things? Different problems emerge as we fix certain problems along the way. And I started seeing, like, customers not know about all the features we had in our product because we're shipping them so quickly. And I realized that we needed to shift the way we enable customers, the way we advertise new features, the way we drive adoption of it. I mean, if it's all human led, then like you're just kind of game over. It's not going to work. Certainly in the B2C world, that those companies don't do that. They can't do that. But even the B2B world, it doesn't scale over time.
Sure.
So I saw this opportunity to marry this idea. If we know what people are doing in the product and we have this ability to communicate with them inside, we can actually personalize the experience, which is what people want. People want a personalized experience within their applications. And that was, like, the genesis and the vision around Pendo.
That makes a lot of sense. And I remember some of the early days and some of the customer feedback. But I suspect for every single early stage company, one of the scariest things is to get that initial feedback from customers. I mean, do they actually want what you think they want? When did you feel good about that question?
I joke with my team, I still don't feel that great about it. Like, I wake up every day just scared, no, I'm kidding. Maybe a little bit. There's this great Brad Feld post. I wish I'd find it, but I'd read this post and I'd obsess over every paragraph. And it used to stress me out because, like, you'll have fit when like blah, blah, blah. People just start coming to you. And I'm like, I'm waiting for people to come to us and just start buying. That didn't happen exactly as easily as it said. But a couple of things I started seeing. Yeah. One, when we shipped, we just said, anyone who wants to use it, for free, can start using it. And so we kind of started there, and I used my network to get people to use it. And all we asked in return was feedback. Like feedback costs money. Like there's, the lean startup validated learnings that there's value in that. So we asked people for their feedback, and we just kept iterating like week over week. And then our product does measure what people do inside of products. So we were, of course, using our own product and figuring out what was valuable, and not. So that was another kind of early indicator. Some people like the term dog fooding. Some people call it drink your own champagne. We were doing that since day one, always. And then what we started seeing is people sending us like board presentations with like screenshots of our product. And that was a pretty good sign. Like, well, this is good enough to put in front of a board. It's probably valuable. So it wasn't random. And people would say, hey, I did this slide, and can you change this, or can you adjust this? Or we would really like to report on this. We can't quite do it in your product. Like, can you help us? And that's when we started getting some sense, okay, well, this is actually more value than we thought. We weren't even charging at the time. So then I started thinking, well, maybe we should charge for this. Like if people are putting it in front of their board, and that's kind of what started a bit of the process. But I'd also say we're just incredibly customer focused, and a big part of how we worked, and this may feel like there may be people in the audience that completely disagree. He probably disagrees. But I don't believe that roadmaps or force ranked lists of things to build in the earlier stage, I think it's all like clay to me, Yeah. And if the customer said, hey, I'll buy if I want this other thing, which is like 2 clicks down to my current priority list and the current thing, and like we just move it up. I mean, as I tell people, I was not married to my roadmap. I was married to getting product market fit, and if it meant moving things around, we just move things around. And it was like agile to an extreme, and I think that really helped. Now, of course, we can't do that today at our size and scale. Yeah. That would create chaos, and our engineers would all walk out. But at the early days, yeah, we were like pretty aggressive, and I think that was the magic that really got us to fit.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. You mentioned that nowadays it will be very difficult to do that. And Jay, you've run very large engineering organizations. We'll love to get a sense from you today how maybe Lacework is structured on the product and engineering side, and how do you guys make decisions around roadmap and resource allocation?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say, no surprise, we're scaling really quickly in product and eng, right? So finding kind of the best people and having those conversations, getting them interested in the recruitment process, interviewing, all of that candidate experience. But more and more importantly, just even once we have brought somebody into the company, it's that onboarding, right? Because our space that we work in, the cloud security industry, is just a very diverse space. There's a lot of aspects to security. There's a lot of acronyms. There is a lot of like unsolved problems. There's a lot of old ways of doing things, and I think this is where to kind of build on Todd's point here, which is, the industry again in security and cloud is just moving so quickly. And I think one of the things that bringing kind of from prior lives with me into Lacework is that almost that consumer kind of engineering or product development mindset into an enterprise company, because, we have not pivoted, but we are not a one product company. We're a platform company with multiple products that solve multiple or serve multiple personas in a company when it comes to all things security. So, there's flows and there's products and insight that we can bring to a developer, to the DevOps team, to the SecOps team, to the CISO, to folks that care about, important but maybe mundane things like compliance, right? And these are all aspects that every tech company has to deal with if they're going to scale and be successful in the enterprise space today. So a lot of this is one, scaling the team, getting the team kind of to work as a team. We have a lot of different competing priorities, just like what Todd and, any hyper growth company comes in. There is some structured planning that we do just to kind of keep everybody pointed in the same direction. And we leverage some different tools, and we're getting better and better about that planning process. But one of the things that I think, I think it's maybe intuitive, but it's, I think, rarely spoken about, which is when you're in hyper growth mode like we are, and, Todd is, I think just embracing the fact that kind of everything breaks pretty regularly, right? Sure. And not just your technology, but your internal processes. And it could be your recruitment process, and my experience is like, if you're not sort of like, I think hyper growth companies are successful because they embrace the breakage, right? They know that things are going to break. They see things breaking. And it's your ability to see those things happening before they kind of blow up, or when they blow up, you fix them faster than your competitors do, right? So, and that's what keeps you on that S curve. The folks that are scared or trying to prevent the breakage, I think then companies tend to have a flatter, a less steep growth. So I think it's, in some ways, like the force of will that needs to be in the product and engineering team to drive that kind of scale and hyper growth. We used to have this thing at Facebook, which is, when you do a code deploy and it's not quite working, your 95% instinct is to just roll it back, right? It's like, hey, this thing's not working, roll it back. It's like, no, you make it work. You do it quickly and you make it work and you keep moving forward, right? Now, there is some exceptions here and there's some nuances here. So I don't want, that to
How big is the product engineering org at Lacework today? Maybe give us a little bit of context.
It's scaling. The team has grown, I think, about 4x since the beginning, 3x before the end of the year. We're, call it in the neighborhood of 1,000 people total in the company. And, we're really focused on hiring the best talent, and we're trying to figure out also, just like everybody else, what the remote and office situation looks like. And, we're learning, I think, with everybody else out there.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what is your current hypothesis?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're still remote, right now, and just, I think, taking it day by day, week by week. I currently think that we'll normalize around having a couple of key hubs where we already have big populations of our team. Our go-to-market efforts are really spread out already around the world as we continue to kind of scale and serve more customers around the world. I think product and eng tech, G&A will kind of organize around a few hubs, and then we'll have some significant portion of the team being fully remote, more than probably what any company would have done or planned for prior to COVID. But this is all where I think we're still adjusting, we're still learning, and I think we're going to figure it out.
How about on the recruiting front? You've seen recruiting at Facebook. You're doing a lot of recruiting, I'm guessing, at Lacework. How does that compare, contrast, and what are you seeing there?
Yeah, so I think I don't think there's no secret in that. Finding great talent is hard all over the world these days, right? And there are lots of reasons for that, but I'd say for us here is the things that we're focused on really is just how to scale up the overall kind of predictability of the process, right? And making sure that we are, just given the number of people we need and the diversity of kind of job profiles and talent that we're looking for, whether it be front-end engineers or data scientists or kind of data infra folks or machine learning and AI folks or other distributed systems folks, and all the different types of like product management, security experts and other platform experts, the API, the UX side of it, so there's a lot of different technical job profiles that we're expanding on. But we want to have a consistent flow for how we find people, what the story is, how we get them engaged in conversation, what the interview process looks like, and what the debrief and sort of decision-making process looks like, right? And I think there's just a lot of structure that you need to put into place there to make sure you have a consistent kind of fast process, and one that you learn a lot about the candidate, but also the candidate gets to learn a lot about the company and you, right?
Yep.
And then it's a collective, decision to partner together and to work together, right? And so there's a lot of stuff that we're doing just to increase velocity and to improve the candidate experience as well. It's really important to us here, regardless of what happens, is we want, to meet great people. And if, it all works out, it works out. But if it doesn't, we stay in touch, and we really care about not wasting other people's time as well, right?
Yep.
So we want that to be efficient. And then there's just a lot of work that needs to, down in the sort of the nuts and bolts. It's like, okay, you have these interviews, who's focusing on what types of questions, how do we write up feedback, how do we debrief, how do we make decisions? All of that kind of stuff is just, able to, I think, streamline the process for us and for the candidate. So again, these are things that do, as you scale, they continually need adjustment and improvement. They don't, whatever process you kind of design in month 1, if you're growing quickly, they're probably going to break in month 4 or month 5, and you have to kind of keep on it. You have to keep investing. And it's one of those things where I think it's counterintuitive. You have to actually hire great people to help you run these processes, right? And you have to programatize that. You have to have good metrics. You have to have great ways of getting feedback from candidates and from the system as well. So that's our focus right now, is to improve a lot of what we're trying to do, and make sure that as we look into next year and the year after, that we're building a scalable kind of recruitment systems here.
Makes a lot of sense. And the company that is with 5 people versus 10 versus 500 looks dramatically different, right? And
yeah, and when I was at Facebook, when I joined, we were 300 engineers, and when I left, we were call it 35,000 engineers, right? And the challenge in terms of how we scaled up, kind of what every day looked like in terms of numbers of interviews that we had to do, and how we managed that process of collecting feedback, scheduling, coordinating things. It got really hard also once we started opening up more engineering offices. Turns out that it's easy when everybody sits on the same floor in one building, finding engineers to do the interviews. Turns out it's much harder when people are spread across different buildings. Even in the same zip code, it was hard to kind of get that coordination done. So we had to build in a lot of tooling and coordination, scheduling systems so that we could get the interviews done, and then everything else kind of downstream of that.
Makes a lot of sense. I mean, Todd, you've seen a lot of change at Pendo. I remember Pendo, to start with, is a very much product and engineering led organization, and that has evolved over the years. Can you share a bit of insight and what that journey has looked like for you?
Yeah, and look, we're still adapting and still changing. I mean, as Jay said, I mean, I 100% agree. There's something always broken, and your job is to try to stay ahead of it, or just deal with it in the best way possible to keep moving fast. But yeah, look, I mean, I'm a product person. My co-founders, CTO, we both wrote code for the first year.
I hope you're not still writing code.
I am not writing code. He is still writing code, but I am not writing code. I do tease people once in a while that I'm going to do it. So yeah, fun fact, a couple of years ago, an engineer challenged me because I think he thought that I couldn't actually do it with all of our process. And there's a lot more process than we started. And sure enough, it took me 3 days, but I did check in something into our repository a few years ago, just to I don't like being challenged. So it's, so I get a little bit of my personality. So, look, I think the biggest challenge is a product-oriented founder that people want to always talk about probably is do you give it up? How do you give it up? And I struggle with this, I'll be honest. And throughout the company's history, I have been more and or less involved in the product decision-making. It just depends. And we did hire a chief product officer early on, and I gave that person space. I actually am pretty decent at delegating. I like to delegate, but I wanted to stay close enough where I wasn't things were completely outside of my vision. But you have to build a really good relationship, and so we had a CPO, for over 4 years. He just left the company in May of this year. We just brought on a new CPO, who I'm incredibly excited about. She just started a few weeks ago. And I think it's a partnership. It's a partnership. And the right CPO engages the product-oriented founder. Like if she just cut me off or he had cut me off, like that probably would not have been good for the company. But you want someone who's going to engage you and build a strong relationship and really can carry on your vision. And there's a lot of things like, I'm not in people's backlogs. Like I'm not reading Jira tickets, very far away from that. But like, when you're funding an initiative, it's millions of dollars when we put multiple teams across the year. I mean, it's like a real decision. So just reminding product managers like, hey, it's okay that the CEO is looking at this because we are spending millions of dollars of the company's money. And if it's wrong, well, we just want to make sure we have everyone aligned in this decision. So I think there's a lot of discussions around that we have right now.
There was a question from the audience related to this, which is, when you brought in a product leader or engineering leaders at the, Series A or Series B, did that slow things down at all? Going from a very small, nimble, scrappy startup to more organizational structure and leadership?
Of course. Yes, of course it's going to slow things down at first. And in general, when you're implementing process, it's going to slow things down. But then the other thing you got to start measuring is how much rework do we have to do because we were going too fast in certain areas and had to come back later and then go fix it. So these things like aren't binary But yeah, I mean, from time to time, things ebb and flow. Things would feel slow in certain phases. Things would feel buggy in certain areas. I mean, one area, we obviously measure quality in like a variety of different metrics. And like it was clear quality is getting worse. And we took a pause on new feature development for a period of time. We said, we just need to go back and like clean up our house, so to speak, metaphorically our house, it's like get our code base in order, like really look through like what are the types of defects, which slowed us down as a company, but ultimately benefited customers. So like the way I look, in order to move fast, there's a set of KPIs that we use that I call like the guardrails in the business. As long as we don't like get outside the guardrails, we can keep going fast.
Can you share some of these KPIs?
Yeah, our Net Promoter Score is something we've measured since we're a small company and still very, very strong. Our eNPS, which is our Employee Net Promoter Score, another one. And if when our NPS goes down, we do something about it. We shift our priorities. We look at our backlog. We look at the qualitative feedback. And we sort of make changes in order to adjust. And that's been part of our guardrails that have helped keep us user and customer focused from the very, very beginning. So if our employees all get pissed off, which not gonna lie, we've had some engineering offices where we've had some change and like, things have dipped down quite precipitously, and then we've had to adjust and some challenging moments there. I mean, I'll just share this quick story. We did an acquisition in Israel. And look, I don't live in Israel. I saw some things I wanted to be better, but that wasn't a solution for me to live there. So, and that was the first time we had a remote office for engineering. And my co-founder and I are looking at like, but I need to find a leader we trusted. So we bring in a new leader. We felt so excited about it. eNPS jumps below 0.
Oh boy.
Like never had seen a negative score in the company history. Yeah. And we brought in a new leader and he was, we were worried there was going to be like, tissue rejection, organ rejection, transplant. We felt, but you know what? We stuck with it. And I flew to Israel a lot for about 3 or 4 months. And now their office has the highest eNPS in engineering. And has like a year.
What are some of the tactical things you did to try to resolve this?
Well, I think one was the new leader someone who shared our values and we really believed in? Yes. Okay, then why is there friction? He's obviously a change agent. Change creates friction. And then we were trying to understand, and I just did a lot of one-on-ones, a lot of skip levels. In general, if you just look at my schedule, I spend a pretty decent amount of time doing skip levels. And the skip levels will range from what department probably having the area of concern. That time I was doing a ton in Israel, but like, some quarter it's marketing. I'll go deep on it. I go really deep into the org and I'm just collecting data. I'm not necessarily making a decision, but I'm trying to understand, do I feel confident in my decision or did I screw this one up? Because in this case, we felt confident in our decision. And then it's just being patient, and letting the leader do their work. And it's hard when you're a small company used to moving fast to be patient. It's one of the skills that I've struggled with the most. Like, how long do I wait? But I mean, Jay probably has experienced this much more than even I have. I mean, like, when the larger you are, the more patient you have to be in certain instances, and just being patient, and yeah, things turned around.
So. Culture is what's the most important. I mean, that is more important than strategy and more important than anything else, especially for early stage companies. Jay, maybe just on this point, we'd love to get a sense from you. What are some of the cultural values at Lacework, and what's really important for you as you build your team?
Yeah, so we went through an exercise earlier this year just to really reformulate what the company core values are, and we call it the Lacer Way. And we came up with several values that we think really are important for our company, our business, our mission, the type of people we're hiring. And I do believe that these values are, they're important in that they have character to them, they have tension in them. They are not your sort of maybe bland statements of values of like trust or innovation or those things I think don't do culture enough justice when you're trying to build an iconic company with amazing people going after a really just immense, extraordinary kind of mission. And you want to do that for like the next many decades, right? You're not trying to just do something to flip the company or whatnot. So the values were a really important exercise that we spent a lot of time on, not just, a couple of people whipped it out or we hired some consultants to do it for us. Like it was an exercise that did bring in lots of people around the company to get feedback and keep tweaking and iterating, throw stuff away, try something new. Now those values are, really getting, I think, incorporated into lots of what we're doing.
What are the values? Can you share?
Well, we have some values are not too foreign to probably people, but for example, one of our values is being open, right? But what does that mean? It means different things to different people, to different parts of the business at different times, right? So being open.
What does that mean for your organization?
Well, like I said, every team, every leader is going to think about it differently. For Hat and myself as co-CEOs, being open, for example, is sharing a lot of information about what's going on in the company with the company, right? So we do, for example, every 2-week all hands where, we go through a lot of updates and share a lot of context and talk about, positive things that we need to do better, focus areas. We'll share kind of customer wins, customer losses, new product launches, feedback. Like as Todd mentioned, some of the stuff that comes out from the employee surveys, we're very open about that with the entire company. So that's just one example of, what we have. And, another one is winning as a team. And, first of all, you have to like operate as a team and then you can win. But how do you actually build? And, it's not just hiring people and saying, hey, here's a manager, here's some people, that's a team. That's not a team in our book, right? There's a whole different set of things in terms of perspectives, the relationships, how to prioritize, how to work through different perspectives, opinions, how to make those decisions, how to keep learning, how to be supporting each other, how to be pushing each other. We want to keep hiring better and better people. So the set of people we're hiring today versus the people we'll hire a year from now, we want the bar to be higher. Right? We want to be, adding capability and talent and experience to the team. So these are all things that we have as a values perspective that kind of really permeate from hiring to onboarding to the way we do our work day to day to some of the language and labels we put into things like all hands or into performance reviews. And we do think that, and I don't think it's so much about maintaining the culture of the company. I think it's about evolving the culture of the company. And I think that's just, a really, maybe it's semantics, but I think it's a really important word choice to have. When I was at Facebook, I used to have many engineers coming to me who was like scared about sort of, why are we hiring all these people, Jay? Like, why we should just stop hiring. We don't need all these people. Like, we don't want to lose our culture. So therefore we must not hire people. And it's like, and it was great. It was a good conversation. But the conversation I would try to have with them is about evolution. And you want to be like the best company at whatever size you are, right? And to me, it was like, hey, we were a couple hundred people when I joined. We're going to be the best company then. And then we get to 10,000 people and we're going to be the best company then. But that means evolution of the culture versus sort of holding on to like the way you did things, when you were 300 people, because the way you did things from a culture, like, yes, you can have your core values and your mission, but the way you did things, the ways you worked, kind of the languages you use to talk and work together, they need to evolve because you're getting bigger and bigger. Hopefully that's, a sign of success, right? And you want to embrace, you want to kind of go with that success and keep evolving, because if you don't evolve, if you're trying to maintain, then you're not learning, and then you're not growing, and then somebody else is just going to beat you because they're gonna move faster, they're going to learn, they're going to evolve, and the world just moves too fast.
Absolutely. Large companies have the benefit of scale as the primary asset, and then small companies have the benefit of evolution. And that's what we love about that. One of the things you mentioned as a cultural value is winning together, right? Winning as a team.
Yep.
And it's an interesting topic because this is one that, we talk about quite a bit with our companies, especially in the early days. Oftentimes there's product and engineering, and there's a relationship with sales and marketing, which winning together or winning as a team can mean a lot of things. Some companies have done things like, hey, everyone's compensated the same way based on the same KPIs. Others have, taken a very different approach. And, obviously as companies scale, that also changes. Curious about just the relationship between the product engineering side of the house, which we've talked about quite a bit, and how the interplay of that with sales and marketing is. Maybe starting with Jay at Lacework and
yeah. So for us, I think it's it's pretty simple to explain. I think in practice it's hard because there's personalities, there's different competing tension or priorities, I should say. Not we can't get everything done that we want to get done, and we can't respond to every customer feature request, because ultimately we want to be responsive. We want to build a great platform and a great set of kind of offerings, but there are places where what customer wants, may be, as Todd said, like, you're bigger now and you can't just do, like, maybe that's like 3 months out instead of 3 days out. And, that may mean the difference of like closing a deal now or closing a deal later, but you do have that bigger, more strategic view of your roadmap and what you're trying to build out, because your product is getting more complex. It's being used in multiple different ways. But ultimately, what I think we try to really orient around is like, okay, what does the customer base, the segment want? What's the problem they're trying to solve? And just work backwards from there, right? In terms of what is the product and the tech and the data, then what is the narrative, the pricing, the packaging, what do we need to do to enable the sales team, train customers, partners. So just like working backwards from kind of what the problem is and what the opportunity is, I think tends to normalize the conversation, right? Versus like if you look at it inside out, then I think you tend to maybe collide and bounce off of each other. But if you start with the customer first and work backwards and then get the right people in. The other thing that I would say is what I've observed a lot of in prior companies like Facebook and also here in Lacework is just from a working relation perspective, it's very typical, I think, and it's an easy trap to fall into where there's a lot of pairwise conversations that happen internally, right? So salesperson talks to SE person talks to somebody in the product marketing team, SE person talks to somebody in Eng, the end person talks to PM talks to the customer. Those pairwise conversations just our normal behavior when you're fast moving like this. And there's a Slack conversation here, there's a quick, phone call here. But the more you can kind of find when that's happening and get everybody organized on one call, right? And it tends to then everybody hears the same information. Everybody has the shared context, and it reinforces this like, hey, we're all in this together. We got to go figure this out and like delight the customer together, right? But the pairwise conversation stuff, like, there's information drift. There's a bunch of time that's lost. And then I think people start to feel like they're cut out, or they have partial information. And then ultimately the person who suffers is the customer, right? Ultimately the customer gets something that they don't want, or doesn't get it on time, or you don't meet their expectations. And then there's just frustration that builds in the team. So the more you can what I find is like get everybody together and work it together, it's just more effective. And I think you respond faster, and everybody learns faster as a result of it.
For sure. And Todd, you've done a great job kind of starting off with a product and engineering-led company to building a world-class go-to-market team and coordinating kind of the interplay between the two. Can you tell us a bit about that and that experience?
Yeah. I think this is something I'm very passionate around. I think I'm not huge on this whole you have to be led by one department like narrative that seems to be pervasive. So, and actually I've been told by a number of our newer employees that we're I think unique in that we're very both, like early in my career, one of my CEOs told me, software company do two things. We build software, sell software. Those are the two most important functions. Everyone else exists to support the people that build it and the people that sell it. So those are our two biggest departments. And I think they work very well hand in hand. Yeah, I agree with everything Jay said, like starting with the customer, focusing there. Even from the early days, we would put the engineers on phone calls with prospects and customers. We still do that today. We hire for that. Like if you're the kind of engineer who likes to be in your cubicle and not talk to a human, Pendo's probably not the right home for you. So that's okay. It's just probably not the right home. So and that doesn't mean you will. It means that you might be able to. And the other thing we've emphasized from day one, win together is one of our core values. And if you see an announcement for a deal, and I could pull any of them right now, you would see every single person who helped win that deal. There is no deal that one person helped that closes. Yes, the salesperson's a facilitator, they drive the process, but everyone makes a point to call out someone else who helped. I mean, it could be someone obviously natural ones are like SDRs or SEs and someone in marketing, but you'd be surprised the kind of names that show up outside of the sales partner. Of course, the larger the deal, the more names you'll see on that area. So that's been good. I think one of the other cool things is we ran programs more small, and some of these were relying on being in office. We're doing one quarter. When anyone had a deal to close, they would invite someone engineering to ring the gong on behalf of the salesperson. So now you have like engineers ringing the gong, and we're a pretty back-end loaded company. So like the last week of the quarter, like there's a lot of gong ringing. So like the engineers were like fired up and included, and it felt good. I mean, now like work in our office hubs are optional, but at the end of the quarter is a lot of food. I mean, a lot of food.
You got to get a virtual gong somewhere.
I personally curate the food though. So like people come into the office now because they know we're going to feed you well. And the energy and the buzz, and like we get more people from engineering in the last week of the quarter, even if it's not their function, because they just want to be around the energy. So that's another thing that's good. Another thing we did, which is actually also fun experiment. We don't do it all the time, but we do spiffs, fun spiffs. We do a wheel of fortune where if someone who closed a deal gets to spin a wheel and the prize. But we turned it around. They could give the prize to anyone across the company, non-sales. So it created a situation where we had developers walking home with flat screen TVs. So that definitely changes the culture around, like, because like, again, it's, look, if you don't have a product that's work, you're not going to hit your number, right? Like these functions go hand in hand. They have to work together. And if you can't sell something, like no one wants to work at a company that you don't have products you can sell. So it's like they're critically important. You're trying to develop this feeling of team. So like those are just some fun things that we've done that I think have really helped throughout the years.
That's awesome. Pendo sounds like a lovely place to work at. We're almost out of time, so I want to just ask one last question to both of you. Many of our audience members are founders who are either starting off or going through the early days of scaling. Any advice, any big lessons from both of you that you've learned that you want to share? Maybe starting with you, Todd.
I think the number one lesson I continually remind people is just you gotta hire ahead of what you think you need. And there's this whole concept of your company is likely growing faster than many of the humans at your company. So you're much higher propensity to outgrow the humans. So you have to be very comfortable having those conversations early and often. And that doesn't often mean the person has to go. It just often means that person needs a new boss. But you need to be thinking like 18 to 24 months ahead. Like, is this person in role right 18 to 24 months from now? And I constantly look across the company and try to figure out who's in a role. And you can't hire someone now that just fits now's criteria, or you will absolutely fail. Like, you got to be thinking farther out. So we hired a CFO, and I was like, you don't need a CFO. You're like some tiny guy. Well, guess what? Within a matter of 2 months, we acquired an international company and like raised a large amount of money and like did a bunch of things. And guess what? Having a CFO was like took a ton off my plate, even though it was a bunch of people coached me, you don't need this. Like, if someone's telling you don't need something, you probably need it. Like, that's a pretty good adage, you know.
I like it.
Yeah, even us. Like, I got guilty of doing this recently, where I hadn't hired a VP of investor relations, and I started looking. I was like, oh my gosh, like, we need this role like yesterday. We probably should have been looking 6 months ago. I didn't realize how hard it was going to fill this role. But I think those are the kinds of things where always think farther out. Even if you don't need something today, you will. So like, that's probably the biggest thing.
Absolutely. We got to get you on the boards of our companies. How about you, Jay?
Yeah, very much agree with Todd. I think in terms of just making sure you're sort of hiring, you know, I think as a founder, you sort of need to live in the future of where you want the company to be, not just from a product perspective, but from a scale perspective. And you kind of need to work backwards from that future versus kind of living in the day-to-day, kind of this feature, that thing, this customer thing, this issue. Make sure you have that time to sort of like think about a year, you know, where you want to be a year, like structurally, operationally, people-wise, and kind of work backwards. Because one, it takes time to find these people, like Todd mentioned, right? You need to meet a lot of people. You need to kind of see what you really want out there and develop relationships with these people. And that recruitment process takes time. The other thing I would just say from a founder perspective is, you know, to really early on have a culture of sort of a strong culture or sort of like strong operational muscle around learning all the time. And, you know, when you're building product as a founder, you're constantly trying to learn from customers, from metrics and all, and competition and all that. But internally, making sure that it's not just about learning from like data science on the product usage, but it's about learning how we're operating, like how we're recruiting, how we're onboarding people. When there's like something that doesn't go right in production, you know, what is that process to go tear that thing apart, that incident, and to learn from it and to figure out what needs to change from a people, a training, a technology perspective. So it's really important, I think, to create that, like what I talk about with the team is that learning loop needs to be faster and faster as you scale. It naturally wants to slow down as you get bigger and more successful, right? And you have to fight that tendency because that will slow down your growth, and you won't be in hyper growth mode at that point if you forget not to scale, if you forget to or not pay attention to speeding up the learning loop.
Absolutely. We have to be learning faster than our companies are growing. This is one of the things I remember from one of our founders of Netflix that keeps sharing over and over again with our companies. Well, thank you to both of you so much for this conversation. I learned a lot personally, and I think everybody here has done the same. There's tons of audience questions. I'm sorry I didn't get through all of them, but we'll find another opportunity to have this conversation. Thank you again, Todd and Jay, and hopefully we'll see you soon.
Yeah, thanks, Joanne. Good to see you, Todd.
Thanks.
Bye.